Tuesday, January 3rd, 1865. Companies C, E, F, and G met at Salem, and under command of Lieutenant Colonel William H. Chapman started to the northern neck of Virginia. It had been determined to winter a portion of the battalion there, in order to lighten the burden of the people within the limits of Mosby's Confederacy, who, owing to the scarcity of food and forage after the wanton destruction of Merritt and Custer, were in many instances barely able to provide for themselves the necessaries of life. The other companies remained, and were under the command of Major Richards during the absence of Colonel Mosby. On the 30th of January, Major Richards started from Bloomfield with 30 men for a raid on the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad between Harper's Ferry and Winchester. When he reached the road, about 11 o'clock p.m., he found it heavily guarded by infantry and patrolled by cavalry, so that he could accomplish nothing. He sent a portion of his men back, but kept with him James and Charles Wiltshire, Charles Deere, Joseph Bryan, Edwin Gibson, William Shepard, Bartlett Bowling, John Hearn, and a few others, in all about 15 of his best men, and moved off toward Charlestown. He endeavored to cross the railroad, but could not do so without giving an alarm. Charles Deere and James Wiltshire were sent to quietly scout along the road, and soon returned with 2 of the mounted patrols. Richards questioned them, and then turned them over to Deere and Wiltshire to get the countersign. The men were questioned separately, and on finding their answers the same, the word being clear, Richards sent Charles Wiltshire and Will Shepard down the railroad to test the countersign. They came back with 2 prisoners from the 12th Pennsylvania Cavalry. Among the prisoners was a very communicative Dutchman. After talking with him a while, Richards determined to pay a visit to Reno camp of the 12th Pennsylvania. Taking the Dutchman for a guide, the entire party moved on toward the camp. On the road they were met and halted by a patrol of 4 men, and in reply to the query as to who they were, Richards answered, "12th Pennsylvania, Captain Cook's company." "All right," said the patrol, and as they advanced, they were captured. Richards sent off his prisoners under guard, but kept the Dutchman with him. His force was now reduced to 10 men, and with these he entered the camp. The camp was laid out with cabins on one side, covered with canvas, and opposite were the stables with the horses. As the party rode along, the sentinels were walking their beats, and a soldier coming out of one of the cabins to replenish the fire was captured by Charles Wiltshire. While some of the men were loosing the horses, Bartlett Bowling rode up to a sentinel a short distance off and demanded his surrender. The sentry replied with a shot, which Bowling returned, bringing the man to the ground. The camp being aroused, Richards was compelled to get out in a hurry, firing into the cabins as his party retreated. He brought off 8 horses. As Richards retreated through Charlestown, the enemy opened quite a brisk fire, but all escaped without injury. Sunday, February 5th. Bush Underwood returned today from a scout in Fairfax, bringing in 6 prisoners with their horses and equipments. Being in the neighborhood of Vienna with a few men, he left his companions concealed in the pines, while he and William Trammell rode off to a house at some distance in quest of information. A party of Federal cavalry, which had been sent out in search of him, dashed up to the house before he was aware of their approach. Underwood and Trammell hastily mounted their horses and rode off, closely pursued by the enemy. Reaching Broad Run at a place where the bank formed a steep bluff, they gave their horses the spurs and took a flying leap, leaving their pursuers hesitating on the brink, uncertain whether to shoot or jump. They fired a few shots after the retreating Rangers, which did no harm. Joining his companions, Underwood returned and attacked the party, capturing 6 cavalrymen with their horses and equipments. Sunday, February 19th. I was aroused from my sleep early in the morning by one of the little black boys clattering up the stairs, his feet being encased in a pair of old shoes many sizes too large for him. At every step He called out at the top of his voice, "Yankees! Yankees!"